Hey everybody, it's Party Elite here with some early thoughts on the Tomb Kings. The wonderful folks at Creative Assembly have given me the gift of early access to the factions, and while I can't dive into everything right away, I am able to showcase some gameplay and talk about my initial impressions. First things first, a big thanks to everybody at Creative Assembly for sending me early access. Tomb Kings are among my favorite factions, so I intend to go pretty in-depth, and do a campaign let's play as well, when I can, so keep an eye out for those. Right off the bat, the faction is obviously very unique as a whole in some very interesting ways that we've already seen. Led by either Settra, Khalida, Khattep, or Arkan, they all share many attributes, while Arkan is a step closer to the Vampire Counts than his Tomb King brothers and sisters, because he can actually recruit a couple of Vampire Count units through the Grave Hill or the Ancient Burial Mound that it levels up to. This gives him access to Crypt Ghouls, Fellbats, as well as Direwolves, and then eventually Hex Wraiths as well. And this is true for multiplayer battles as well, so if you go in as Arkan, you can actually recruit these undead units into your army. The objectives stand out, having nothing to do with the Vortex, even in the Vortex campaign, and the Books of Nagash themselves are also pretty interesting. They are spawned based on which lord you've picked, their locations at least, but the various boons they give your faction are different every time you start a new campaign. So as you can see, there's some pretty interesting benefits to be had. For example, campaign line of sight based on goods on the map, or army capacity increase, which is a very big deal when you're playing as the Tomb Kings, including, hero capacity, etc, etc. So very interesting collection of effects that these Books of Nagash have, and no matter who you're playing as, the 9th Book of Nagash is always in the presence, or in the possession rather, of Arkan, giving him the ability to recruit Vampire Count units, as we already discussed. Now, the objectives themselves do go beyond that as well. Of course, there is a quest battle, as well as the requirement to hold a Black Pyramid of Nagash, at least for Arkan, and if you go for a domination victory, you have to destroy a certain set of factions, of course, and maintain control over 50 provinces. Now, that's all par for the course, but really the unique factors come with the campaign victory, with the Books of Nagash, etc. Now, the Legions of Legend are in some ways just more regiments of renown. If you can see over here, the green tabs indicate Legions of Legend, and the interesting thing about these guys is they're actually built or made by the Mortuary Cult, and the Mortuary Cult, I think, is one of the most interesting additions here, adding to the RPG elements of Total War. As you can see, I've already built the Flock of Joff. Otherwise, I can also recruit a new Dynasty. That will cost me a fair sum of cash, though. There are a few more Legions of Legend available, but there are a lot of weapons that can be crafted, and many of them can be crafted multiple times, but some can only be crafted once, as you can see. So there's weapons, there's armor, there are enchanted items to be had, as well as talismans and arcane items, and they all have varying degrees of rarity, various costs. And the thing is, while you can obtain these resources through trade, you can also do it through battle, and I just want to say, when you click on one of the resources, it does take you to the nearest province that has it, so maybe that's hinting that it wants you to be a bit more aggressive and push in a military fashion towards those nearby resources. So a very interesting addition there. I think the Mortuary Cult's pretty interesting. I've got the Flock of Joff in my army that we'll see in action shortly, but in terms of stats and all, it looks like they are basically Regiments of Renown, just another version of that same system. And you can see as well, the Regiments of Renown are coming on release. We're getting a handful of these guys, and they are, of course, locked to rank based on the Lord as well. Tech trees, or as they've been named for the Tomb Kings, Dynasties, are also pretty interesting. As you can see, they have a very common structure down the first 6 trees, and then the 7th is a little unique. So just looking at these, you can see they're all very different. Now, the first step that any one of these does is gives you 1 extra army capacity, but significantly reduces research rate. In fact, these all started at 15, but because I researched the wisdom of the 3rd dynasty, you can see they'll now take 19 turns. That's absolutely huge in some cases. Now, across all of these, there are some commonalities. The priesthood, the apprenticeship, and the patronage, no matter of which god, refers to either lich priests, necrotects, or tomb princes, and you can see they're in different orders down the dynasties, and that means they'll cost different things based on which wisdom you decide to unlock first, depending on canopic jars or various amounts of gold, or whatever currency the Tomb Kings use. Up at the top, you can see a unique Tomb King per dynasty. This guy has various traits that are unique to him, and you can then recruit him into an army for yourself, while at the bottom there's the proclamations, and these give various faction-wide benefits, and as you can see, they are different across each and every one of these dynasties, and just quickly looking at these so you can see that there is a fair bit of variety here as well, which is always nice to see. There's always nice to see variety within a faction when it comes to things like research, and I really like how the tech trees have been laid out. It really is a decision to make which one you want to go with first, especially because this last section over here changes which units get benefits. And as I mentioned, research rates are extremely slowed down as you unlock more of these dynasties, so you have to be really picky and be careful about which ones you want to go with first before you lose out on something based on what units you'll be recruiting soon or whatever it might be. Now, this last tree, like I said, is a little unique here. These use canopic jars and only canopic jars to unlock various heralds, and each of these heralds provides a different benefit to the army. These guys are actually followers, so you'll attach them to your lord in the army, and they give various benefits, including, for example, vanguard deployment for skeleton chariots, which would be absolutely huge in some cases. So these are interesting buffs, and once you get them, you can also get the Heralds Empowered, which increases your army cap, it reduces global recruitment duration, and increases global recruitment capacity as well. So really interesting stuff going on in the tech tree, I think. I'm excited to see these kinds of developments happening to the game. Now, the whole recruitment system, on the topic of global recruitment, is pretty interesting as well. It gets pretty difficult having to limit yourself based on unit caps. As you can see, I've already got as many chariots as possible, so I need to build more of the structure that allows me to recruit more chariots. If I could find the name, they're the Bone Shaper. So it's a really interesting system, forcing you to build the same structure multiple times to increase those unit caps, because they are pretty unforgiving. As you can see, I can only have 4 skeleton archer units, I can only have 2 skeleton chariots, and granted I haven't been playing for too long, but the low tier units, the skeleton warriors and skeleton spearmen, their stats are pretty bad. Now, I will mention really quickly, the Nehekara warriors are from a building that I had and then I demolished, and yet they're still standing in my army. I can't recruit new ones, but they're still here willing to fight, which is nice to see. You don't have to worry about losing a settlement and all of a sudden half your army just disappears. Now, I will say, even though that reduces the cost of fielding an army, the actual structures themselves are still pretty expensive. Things can get pretty pricey. 2,000 for a basic building, going up to 6,000 for a third tier building, 7,200 for an Acropolis structure. So these can get pretty pricey, so it's not just easy going just because you don't have to pay actual recruitment costs or upkeep costs. Also, the fact that you can't have multiple armies without increasing your army cap makes a huge difference. The Tomb Kings have been pretty fun to play all in all. I've played a little bit of each campaign and got some multiplayer in as well, but the systems in place are really interesting, and what I want to take you through right now is my situation in this campaign with Arhan the Black. Now, I was gallivanting around the, what's this region called? The Land of the Assassins. I was gallivanting and took over the Sorcerer's Islands, took over Lashik, and I was about to finish off the army of Bohemond Labelle over here, the last stand of the Knights of the Flame, but unfortunately, as I was besieging them, a rebellion popped up, as they do in my campaigns, and I had to send my one and only army all the way back down south. And that's, again, just an interesting result from the mechanic of, as a result of the mechanic of this army cap. So I had to pull these guys down, and I had to hit this rebellion, and I figured that would be maybe the best battle to showcase, just because these guys have some pretty interesting units that I haven't been able to unlock just yet, and also they're actually pretty well ranked up. So I'm actually going to intersperse this battle footage with some cinematic footage, of course. Now, that is an early preview of the Tomb Kings. Hopefully you guys had a good time. Hopefully you saw something here that you haven't seen elsewhere, but let me know what you're curious about, because of course I do have early access, and as soon as I'm able to talk about the Tomb Kings to the fullest, I will. As always, thank you very much for watching, and make sure you subscribe for more Total War content. But Till next time, cheers.